Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 171, and it's a bit of a departure from the usual situation. It's just a long-form kind of rambling conversation between me and my editor, Gavi Kutliroff. Ironically, this is a very unedited episode. We just kind of left it as is, and we just kind of talked about the intersectionality of being an artist, artistry, engineering, audio, kind of all this stuff and everything in between. I think you'll dig it. It's a bit out there, but it was a very fun chat, and it was just nice to hang with Gavi in person in the studio, and you could kind of hear the aliveness and rawness of that, and so that's really fun. Also, I just kind of wanted to say thank you to everybody who's listened. This is the last episode of 2022. Thank you so much for sticking around with me for this year. It was a challenging year a little bit for me to kind of keep the podcast going because of, we had a second kid, so... But thankfully, we were able to keep it going, and I hope to continue putting out great episodes moving forward, and hopefully the show isn't going anywhere. On that note, I did want to say that I just opened a Patreon page. So if you want to help sustain the show and help me continue to create amazing interviews and conversations through Secret Sonics, that's a great way to help do that. I'll put a link in the show notes. I think it's patreon.com/benwallachmusic. There'll be a link in the show notes, so everyone can go check it out. And if you're interested in helping support the show, that would be a great place to start doing that. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you guys all in the new year. So have a great Christmas if you're celebrating it, which I'm not. All the Jewish people out there, happy Hanukkah. And we'll see you guys in 2023. Hope it's a good holiday season for all of you. All right, take care, and enjoy this conversation with me and Gavi here on Secret Sonics. Hey everyone, if you're a music studio professional who wants to build deeper relationships with better clients, former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, has created some free educational resources for you. The link is in the show notes below, so go check it out. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals.
Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your editor, Gavi Kutliroff, and I'm here with the host of the podcast, Ben Wallach.
Hi, Gavi. Thanks for inviting me onto the show this week.
That's the opposite of what happened.
That is the opposite of what happened.
Yeah, you invited me onto the show.
Yeah, well, I figured you're in Jerusalem in person, and we actually just met up in New York also, which was really fun. Mm-hmm. And so figured let's get together and do an episode. Like, it's just an excuse to hang out, but to feel productive while we're doing that.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of tell the audience a little bit about how we know each other and how you ended up working for me. Let's go through the story.
Should we start at the beginning?
At the very top.
Yeah. So I've known you for a long time now. I've known you since I'm 26 now, and we met when I was 18, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, when I was 18, I was on a gap year program in Jerusalem for the year, and you were like a friend of a friend's brother, was looking for a producer. I've always been a musician first and foremost. I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're talking the audio thing was a later thing for me. And so I was looking to record and never done it before. And we met up, recorded a bunch of stuff, I remember.
Yeah. What was cool about working with you is we just instantly made a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
It was we did you had this vision of just getting the songs out, and so I remember you called it we're gonna do an album. Yeah. And we did it in 2 days, I think.
Yeah.
But it was just you, acoustic guitar.
Totally solo acoustic. I never had zero recording experience.
Just a few takes of each song, really.
Yeah. It's kind of surreal now that I think about it being back. You were in a different space at the time, but being back in in Ben Wallach's recording environment, because I don't think I've ever told you this, but I was a little intimidated, not by you, quite the opposite, but by the recording process at the time. And I had no idea what was going on. When I left, I still had no idea what happened. You know what I mean? And it was and I knew how to perform, but it was it's a totally different experience, and I felt very kind of off my game and thrown off, and which is something also I know that you speak about a lot on the podcast, is it's the idea of a producer as a therapist is so important.
Yeah.
Which is definitely something that I felt like you were good at from the beginning.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. One of the things I pride myself in is my EQ, my emotional intelligence. I feel like that's one of the
that's
like one of my
EQ.
my strong suits.
Yeah, no, totally, and I totally felt it, and it was like I also felt like we shared like certain like we're both huge Dylan fans. I know, which was like a huge, you know what I mean?
You're a
like
bigger Dylan fan than me.
That's probably true, but you got the poster of him in here. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But,
I think maybe more Beatles. I don't know what's our like more.
Yeah, a ton of Beatles, ton of Dylan. We both get the singer-songwriter thing.
Totally, absolutely.
I also kind of like the off the beaten path singer-songwriter thing.
I've also done the singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well. It's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah. So like that was, but anyway, yeah, it was like, so we did that. We just like kind of just like did a ton of music and then I was back. I think the following summer we recorded a bunch more tracks.
Right, we did a second album.
Yeah, we did a second album.
Like
two
a full
solo stuff
album.
that I like never showed anybody. Just like stuff that I was like,
really,
friends.
They're not available for streaming?
No, they're all on Spotify under. I don't tell anyone this except for millions of listeners now, but. But they're all under Spotify under Gavi Kutliroff before I changed my artist name to Pleasant Peasant.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of that's the before times.
The before times.
Fair
enough.
The before four, but
before Corona.
Yeah, straight up, man.
When people say before times, is that what they mean?
Yeah, literally.
Pre-Corona.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was before everything for sure. For sure before that.
Those were good songs though. I felt like
they were. Yeah,
I felt what I liked about. I mean, I just felt like your lyrics were always very sophisticated, and you had cool chord progressions, and
thanks,
you knew your way around the guitar, which is nice.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's always guitar's always.
And I was most impressed with your vocal takes. Were always just like spot on. Like there wasn't.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It was never like a vocal issue if we had to do a new take. Basically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It was like I think also we were able to make so much content because I was so used to performing solo. I grew up in a very not musical community. I would say there wasn't so much wasn't really much of an arts program in my school. Like the band was like one guy and me and like two other people. You know what I mean? Like there was it was very like
just checking recording. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're good.
We'll leave this in. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sweet. But yeah, like the band was like there wasn't really an arts program. I was one of the only musicians. I went to a small like private high school. There was only there wasn't really much. I was one of the only musicians, and for sure in my class and generally in the school, I didn't really play with many people. So I just got really used to playing on my own. A lot of the people I was listening to was a lot of like Dave Matthews and Jimi Hendrix and like guys who were and girls who were just like just great artists who were playing. Very like a lot of Amy Winehouse, that kind of thing too. Like people who were people you could play by yourself and still sound interesting and rich. And like very kind of these like textured artists, and that was kind of a lot of my thing. So when I came in to record with you, I was just like so used to playing. I was just like not relying on anybody else, which is I think where a lot of the that's a lot of how complexity in recording comes from. Like
my singer-songwriter like era also started from a similar place. I just moved to Israel. And for the first time, I didn't have a band. I was like, I need to do something with these like feelings. And
it's a weird feeling when you like you have all this like shit in your head and you don't know, you know what I mean? Like what's that? Speaking of Dylan, like what's the Dylan line in Maggie's Farm? I got all these ideas driving me like floating around my brain, driving me insane. Whatever that line is, And there's there's definitely a need to vomit that out and put it somewhere. And when you don't have anyone else to do it with it. First of all, I think you develop an interesting voice, like artistically. And on the other hand, it also makes recording a lot easier because you're so used to, you know what I mean? Like for me, like that recording session was basically
piece of cake.
Yeah, because it was the same thing I was doing in my bedroom.
Right.
Which is interesting because now I think I approach it differently. It's like sometimes there's I'm getting ahead of myself here. Skip to the end of the story, but I do think there's times when I know we were just speaking before we were on the air about like I'm kind of putting together an artist project myself right now under the name Pleasant Peasant, and I'm thinking of recording some. I'm working with a producer, producing some band tracks out myself, hopefully, and then for sort of some of it, I want to do this kind of what we had done at the time, like this sort of kind of like really quick, produce this in my bedroom, very off the cuff, preserve all the mistakes and the imperfection. Yeah. I want to deliberately make it. I don't have like a tape machine or anything at home, but like I want to deliberately kind of crapify the recording, and now it feels like more like I can do that. I can engage with that process recording wise deliberately rather than this is the only thing I know how to do. And it's kind of like
that's cool. It's like an intentional versus.
I'd like to opt into like I'd like 2 songs on this album or this EP or this project or whatever it is to be this kind of thing that used to be the only way I know how to perform. And at the time, I felt a little off my game because it was like I think I was very like I think a lot of artists who are inexperienced with recording very confused about coming into your studio and being like, you know what I mean? Like I don't think I was aware which songs I wanted to sound like that and which songs I wanted to sound more polished and had kind of an emotional vision but didn't know how to articulate it. Right. Which is something that I think that's really getting back into kind of typical Secret Sonic stuff. I think that's like that's very much I think the job of the producer and the recording engineer to be able to like be like we were kind of in that space together, and it's like I have this vision, like I don't have the terms to translate these things, and like how can we kind of manifest that somewhere, which I think was something that I was bad at the beginning and learned more to how to communicate with you in that way, and like how to become more aware of like where I was going as an artist and like different like you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's
I don't know if I remember those kinds of conversations though when we did those first records. I think it was just like we just
I think that's what we
kind of just did it, you know.
Yeah, I think it was like I think like from my end it was kind of like I think that's I said that wrong. What I should have said was if I had been more aware of what I wanted as an artist, and specifically also not even just as an artist, but like about the recording half of the process, like after the creativity has happened with like a kid alone in his room with a guitar, kind of like how does it manifest? I think I was like so lost and confused about how, which is I think why I think it's important that we like broadcast this stuff more to both, so that producers can understand and like recording engineers can understand artists and vice versa. I was gonna ask you this. It's like it's like how important is it for artists to like understand the recording process, I guess, before they get into their first this is actually a great segue into what we were so like so we like I said, like we were talking about, we met. We recorded these solo albums together, which I had no concept of marketing. Just like I just kind of wanted to put it on Spotify, show it to my friends. Feel like I'd done something, let it sit.
We were both at the beginnings of our journey.
Yeah,
so,
very
if you think
true.
about it, like I don't know,
totally.
like again, I've been doing this for like a decade, but like more. I've been doing this for I don't know, 13 or 12 years or something.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're talking.
But still, this was still 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So like, I really didn't know much. I was just kind of doing the best I could with the
totally.
equipment I had and the space I had. And
I think we were also like kind of struggling to understand each other as not struggling. I think we had a great connection, but I think we were there was an element there that I think like you didn't totally understand me as an artist and I didn't totally understand you as a producer, and we were both coming into our own identities as those things.
I think I was more of like
you were more farther along the line, I think.
Well, I was more of an audio engineer, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I was coming at it from like an engineering perspective. Like I'm just gonna put up these mics and let you do your thing.
Right. For those sessions in particular, that was exactly what it was like.
Yeah.
And I think it was like I certainly felt like I was at a loss to I don't think I knew how little I knew about the recording side of things. And
right, but how could you? You were 18.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a different headspace.
Yeah.
So to get back to what we were talking about before, right? So we did those things, those projects together. I went back to America. I was in college in Brandeis University. I was out of Boston for 4 years. Didn't study music, but I was writing the whole time.
You studied literature? What did you study?
I studied East Asian studies and psychology.
Wow.
Yeah, just pure interest.
Also psychology.
Yeah. Although I will say it's kind of there's going to be a lot of these, but this is certainly a tangent. But there's a great Alan Rickman interview segment that I saw recently. The Severus Snape, the actor. He's a great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was a great. He was like a big British Shakespearean
He passed
actor.
away like maybe a decade ago or 5 years ago.
Recently, a couple years ago. Yeah. But he was like he's a real hero, that guy. And there's a great interview I saw. He's really one of the greats, I think. And there was a great interview segment I saw with him where he was like, he was asked about advice for young actors, and he was like, do anything but focus on acting. He's like, go out and travel, see the world, pick up weird hobbies, learn different languages, talk to people in like talk to homeless people on the corner, like go out, you know what I mean, like get into the minds of people in corners of life that you don't normally interact with, and like it's tapping into human nature, right? And I think that's
interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's really something I definitely believe about art in general. And for sure, like I became a real history buff in college and a big kind of student of culture, I think. And now I feel, I think I identify very much as a folk musician now. And that's something that I think in a way, I think really came from studying things that had nothing to do whatsoever with music. Like I think having eclectic interests and an eclectic identity is, can only help any artist really, or anyone working with artists, I think.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, but so anyway, I was kind of I was studying that in school, East Asian Studies and psychology, and then afterward, I moved back to Israel briefly, and we did another project together. A couple of those are actually I have on Spotify now under Pleasant Peasant. And,
nice.
And I came back.
It was like a 1 day session, and then you left
really quick. Yeah, it was a pandemic. It was like a crazy.
And then
we were like planning a bunch more, and then it was like totally hit the fan.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was an insane time. Like a lot of people, I think we were like psyched to start a project, and then just we were out of there. But,
it was done before. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, but I went back to so I went back to the States after that, and ended up moving to New York, and I was kind of like, okay, I want to. I'd never really been, like I said, I'd never really been part of a scene before, and I wanted to be around a studio environment, and feel like I was kind of part of that musical world, without really understanding what it was. I think in the beginning, I certainly don't think I was in any position to say I would have been in any position to be like, I want to get into audio, I want to get into sound. Like it was much more like, even at the time, I was probably 22. I don't really think I understood it. It's about probably 23. It was like 3 years ago, pretty recently. I went to so I ended up getting an internship at a studio, and it was really like crushing in the beginning. It was a pretty typical internship. I think there was like, it was a smallish space, and the guys who owned it were kind of like, yeah, like come on in, do your thing, like look at the equipment. But they were very hands off. They were like answer questions when I was around, and there were no kind of clients in the space, but like no one was recording or anything. But they were very hands off. They were very like, I don't think they realized how little I knew, and there's probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. And certainly didn't go to school for it and anything. But it was like it was a very discouraging environment, and I found it to be. I was like this whole, like I was sort of like being big fish, small pond a lot of my life. And I kind of felt like, oh, like I'm the music guy because, I'm a good guitarist, I'm a good writer. And like, and sort of like that was kind of my reputation in that community. And then I entered this just metropolis of a city, and I realized like, not only are people better at the things that I'm good at than I am, but there are also like so many other continents of this like musical planet that I have no bearing on whatsoever. And just like kind of opened my eyes and like realized how rich of a world audio is, and recording and producing and engineering, and how those things are so different from performing, which is so different from even just exclusively on the artist side of things. Like those are so different from being aware of your image aesthetically, and like being aware of or being a being a session musician is so different than being a songwriter. And like those things are like, it's just there's like all these totally different worlds. And I was really paralyzed by that for a long time.
Right. Inevitably, we often wear many of those hats, but not all of those hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think also what's really unique about, I think a lot of artists, not in the music world, just anyone into the arts in general, like using kind of capital A, like in the broad sense of the term, really, I think people who are into the arts kind of get this, that they do like there's so many actors who are like part-time musicians, and so many musicians who understand production, and like there's this interesting like, I don't know why, but something about the arts is like, maybe it's kind of the Alan Rickman thing. It's like
multidisciplinary.
It's like it's like you're students of human nature a little bit. And it's like, so I do think that
like I think I have good taste in movies, right? Not just in music,
right? And it's also like, it's rare that I find someone who's like who's into really good music who I find out just really likes really shitty movies. Which is like interesting, right? There's like something to that, I think, and
it's rare that you find people like that.
It's rare that I find people like that. Yeah. And it's like, and it's so much more often. You just encounter like, I don't know. It's like there's something in you that's attractive.
Right. Like if you have good taste, then you're probably into a lot of good things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like taste is something that transcends particular genre, or interesting. Or, you know what I mean? And I think that,
right. Like, and you could like a lot of different genres, and even if it's not your favorite thing, you can appreciate what's good about it.
And even more than taste, I think.
Even though like I'm not a massive jazz person, I totally appreciate what's good about bop.
1000%. Yeah.
Or like classical music. I don't listen to classical music, but if I go to a classical symphony, I can totally 100% appreciate everything.
Yeah, and you're hearing it, I think, in a much more nuanced way than people who aren't really into the arts. Right. Like you might both be like, this is a beautiful experience, but like you speak a certain language that not just you went to school for it, or you have a certain skill set, or you play an instrument. It's like you really hear it in a different way.
Like I could understand that there's the contrast and the dynamics and like all these,
and like because you approach the world in that way, and like you find those things in all forms of the arts, I think. And so I think for that reason it was really and I think it's something else. It's like that, and also like A, that, and B, there's also like, I think a lot of artists are just really obsessive people and like don't like not understanding how
things work.
Yeah, how things work related to their art in particular. So both of those things really was like, for a while I was like really paralyzed by this, like, I don't understand engineering, I don't understand production, I don't understand audio. And I felt like I was like, oh my God, like I'm a shitty, like I'm not music guy anymore. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like, and these like, it really challenged my self kind of conception for a long time.
Your identity.
Yeah, totally. Really, I had like a real identity. It really messed with my head, man. And like after some time went on and I kind of got over it, I was sort of like, kind of just like kicked myself in the butt a little bit. And I was like, it's kind of like now or never a little bit. Like I was like sort of like, if I really want to do this thing for a living and I want to get into this world, then I think the professional part of me was like, these are things that are important for me to understand. And then the personal part of me was like, also like, I didn't like, it's also exciting. It's like, I didn't realize how much more out like in this world that there was.
Yeah.
And kind of the behind the scenes aspect of it. And it became really important for me to, for my own creative process to like understand how to produce my own stuff, to get how like the industry works from all angles. And like all of a sudden, like it's like I had another kind of like, it was like sort of for the second time, like my eyes kind of opened again, right? It's like the first time was sort of when I came to this and I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how big of a world this was. And it was really scary and intimidating and anxiety inducing. And then I really kind of decided to like jump in and learn these skills. And, I started editing the podcast for you, and I started like kind of working around town. And I ended up getting gigs running live sound in a few different venues in New York and just like kind of learning production on the side and like getting more into all that stuff and working with some friends, that kind of thing. And the more I got into it, the more it's like, I watched Sound City recently. I'm in the middle of it still.
Oh, Dave Grohl's documentary.
Yeah, Dave Grohl's documentary about the
amazing.
studio.
I should really rewatch it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. By the way, this is another tangent, but like my favorite part about that is when they talk about how like 7 out of 10 hits, I think, throughout the 70s
were recorded
in the same room.
That's absurd.
So it was like the sound of 70s rock is like literally a single room.
That's
it's crazy. Like
wow.
It's like a really,
I forgot about that.
Exactly.
That's
and like
statistic.
This whole thing, right? It's like, I think when you're a kid, and I'm sure you know what I mean, like it's everyone who listens to this or everyone who ends up as an engineer or producer or whatever. It's like, I think like we all kind of started out as just like huge music fans.
Yeah.
And like, just like, and there's so much like music's a religion, man. Like there's so much mythology in it.
Yeah.
And there's like, what was I going to say? Like I just remember being 15 and like hearing, and like the idea, and it's like the idea that the people I was hearing were in physical spaces was so like, I could never relate to that. If you would have told 16-year-old me that, I would have been like, no, like these are these have been, like this Zeppelin record is since the dawn of time, you know what I mean? And like, these are like these like godlike figures to me, and like seeing, and then getting into recording and engineering and hearing these stories, of, and like, watching something like Sound City and like seeing like there's a physical space where these things were recorded. It brings the mythology down to earth in a really crazy way. That's like, it's to me, it's like a new kind of exciting. It's like, oh, I didn't like, these are real people.
Yeah.
And like it's like all of the like these legendary stories of, or like how these records came to be. They were not like, these aren't like produced by gods and like they're not, you know what I mean? And
by
like,
mere mortals
with like just a really just profound understanding of sound. And a lot of the time, especially like in the early eras, like in 50s and 60s, like just stumbling their way through recordings and like accidentally stumbling on brilliant precedents.
Did you watch the Let It Be documentary?
Yeah.
And just like Glyn Johns is like in his 20s,
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah,
he's
and
like
a lot
the
of
same age
like,
as the Beatles. Like,
which is crazy. Yeah, they're all like 15-year-old kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And none of them have any idea what they're doing.
Mid late 20s.
Yeah. No, I mean just like they're all like beardless, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. They look like so young. Yeah,
it's crazy. And like they're what was I gonna say? And like a lot of the time, it's like, I mean, on the one hand, they understand, like the physics of sound like so profoundly, and on the other hand, like this technology is like so in development, and you can so see it. Like they're like screwing around half the time, and they're like messing around with like what they're like where they're miking, and like
they bring in like those, like I remember that scene where they bring in the amps for the not the Whirly, the Rhodes, like the Fender Rhodes amp. They're just like wheeling it in fresh out of a box.
George brings it from his house or whatever. He's like, you know what I mean? He's just like, he's in his like big, he's in his big furry coat, and he like asks, he's like, I just like brought in the 8-track from the house, and it's like, I think that was the same scene, but
amazing when they're moving into what's it called? The Apple headquarters.
Yeah, exactly right.
But you just see them.
They're just studios in the middle. Yeah,
they're just such regular people, just kind of figuring out how to make this record, which like for us is like, like you said, mythological.
Right. It's like,
but it just happened, and they're just kind of, like they left, like whatever. Paul left that bad chord and let it be,
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, it's so funny also, because like, I think when you're this like rock and roll kid who's like just obsessed with this, like just with this, at least that's what I felt. And from listening to your voice every week for the last 12 months, I know that's what you felt too. That like, there's this real like religious, like spiritual reverence, I think, that a lot of us have for this kind of culture. And it's like even the mistakes that like it's such a funny thing, right? It's like it's the like someone will like there'll be like a fucked up chord that like made it that made it into a final recording and it'll become legendary. And then you'll hear that story when you're like 15 or something, and you'll be like, oh yeah, like like the I can't think of an example right now, but like this whatever like this chord like made it onto this track forever, and it's like that story itself becomes part of the legend. It's like the humanity of it is totally squeezed out. Like even the human errors are like these funny, hilarious, legendary stories, right?
Yeah.
And it's like there's something about a combination of like it's like when I started to listen to like professionals talk about on the podcast every week for the last year, like about their experience with from like every era from great to small and like all these different artists and what growing up for them was like and combination of like doing that, like getting into it myself in a meaningful professional way for the first time, and like watching things like Sound City and Let It Be, and like it all just kind of came together, and like sort of it was like this crazy moment where I started to like rethink back on like all the music that I had listened to as a kid and all the stories I had listened to, and all the kind of tropes about like what the recording experience is like and how intimidating and exciting it could become into a studio, and like it became this whole like second life, you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh my God, like all of it's like it's all real. Like it's not just like I'm not like in the suburbs listening to these like mythical records.
Right. Brought it down to earth.
Yeah, which is a really, and it was kind of weird, man. It was like a really trippy experience.
Yeah.
Like realizing that like being like going from artist to like sound person, whatever you want to call it, really like it breathed a whole new life into the artist thing too.
That's
like
interesting.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I
think so. Hey everyone, if you've made it this far into the episode, then you're probably a fan of podcasts that help your personal development in the music industry. Former guest of the show and fellow podcaster Travis Ferentz hosts Progressions, a show about finding success in the music business. If you dig Secret Sonics, I have a feeling that you might enjoy his angle too. You can go check it out via the link in the show notes below. So go check it out. All right, back to the episode. I want to say something about what you just said. I just like, when I made like a record in 2013, which doesn't sound as good as what I would do today.
Sure, of good.
But this is also part of the point is that like when I was, I guess, how old was I when I made that record? About your age. I was 26 in 2013. Right. And for me, like leaving in those mistakes was like I was like, oh, I love that scratch on the guitar. Like let's leave that in because like that's what the cool records have. They have those like amazing.
Like, that's how it happens.
Those amazing mistakes. Yeah. And like as I developed and became more of like an engineer, became more obsessive, blah blah blah. Then you start to like remove all these mistakes, and then you kind of get into this mode where you're making like almost very sterile recordings. Yep. And now I'm trying to like break free of that, like that's where I'm like trying to go back to that like inspiration as like a
outside of music
at the beginning.
You want to talk East Asian studies, something that
when you're naive, when you're young, you're naive and you're passionate, and you like you still remember how much you love those mistakes on those records.
There was 1,000%, and I think that like I studied a lot of Chinese philosophy in college, and something that I always really admired is the I wrote my thesis about a Chinese philosopher named Zhuangzi who speaks a lot about it's like a 3rd century BCE, Chinese philosopher. And he speaks a lot about unlearning. And I think about that a lot in the arts. And I think in the arts in general and music in particular, I think about it all the time. It's like, it's something that you hear in common with all masters. Like all masters in really anything, forget just the arts or music, just they all talk about it like they didn't know what they were talking about, then they really knew what they were talking about, and then they went back to basics. It's like everyone talks about that in like every area, and it's really something that like
it's like unlearning music theory.
Yeah, it's right, and it's like, and there is something to be said for like I think you do need a level of technical mastery to be able to unlearn. Yeah, and it's like like I think when it comes to like production engineering, like I'm definitely in the learning phase right now, and I'll get to the unlearning phase later. Yeah, but there's but at the same time, like people who don't know what they're doing have a really beautiful naive view of the world, and when you lose that, I think also what's different about artistry and like production / engineering is like artists in particular, they're not technicians. You know what I'm saying? Like as much theory as you're always trying to make something weird or interesting. I think if you're a sincere artist, like you're drawn, I think, to sincerity. But when it comes to production engineering, it's like you're working for other people, right? So it's like what you're doing is you're the technician in the room. Like your job is to like take off the low end, like so to speak. Like it's your job is like to unmuffle this person and to
but then afterwards you have to figure out, does it suit the music?
Right, exactly. And there's I think that's why it's like the job lends it's a technical job, and it's obviously it's it is an art form, and there's a tremendous amount of creativity. It goes without saying, like, of course, there's an insane amount of creativity involved in the position.
Totally.
But I think at its heart, it's like what you're doing, engineering more than production, but both of them are really like you're interpreting something in a technically like beautiful way. And that's different than the arts, I think. And it's why I think the better you get at it, the more you're drawn toward like making these kind of sterile sounding recordings. And it's like, so it's not like learning how to breathe life back into it. It's unlearning it's like getting back to the artist base that I think, a lot of people, most people who are in the engineering production world, I think start in that world, right? Like they start,
I think so. I think these days, I don't know if it was always this way, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You think like back in the day, it was like, you think guys like Glyn Johns were like,
no, I don't know about Glyn Johns. I can look it up on Wikipedia, but I don't know. Like, I think there was an era where people were like, oh, I'm going to become an audio engineer. Like, I know,
I think that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Even Jeff Emmerich, who recorded the Beatles, like went in to become an audio engineer, and he's brilliant. Like, I love his recordings. I love what he did, and like his book is like my favorite books. Like, but like I think he went in as like I'm an audio engineer. Yeah. And I think these days, I think the processes have meshed more.
Yeah, that's what. I think
we're at it. Like people like millennials and maybe Gen Zs are like
post internet. It's like a whole different world.
Because we have access to this stuff, and we also have access now to knowledge. Like when I was starting, we didn't have this access. Like we have to, like podcasts like mine didn't exist when I was starting. I remember going on Gear Sluts and like. What mic should I buy? Yeah. And feeling super intimidated by like what people are going to respond to me, like, or they're going to think I'm a noob.
Yeah, right.
And that is, I think, is slowly changing a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, I think why there's more women now in the industry, or hopefully there can be more.
Yeah, there's much less of a barrier to entry.
Because there's less of a barrier to entry, and there's less of like the big boys club and
totally.
All these.
Yeah, it's like roles are a lot less defined. You know what I mean? It's like things are more accessible to different kinds of people. And I think it's also like kind of to like get back a little bit to what I was saying earlier, that like I think there's something in like artists and like people who enter art in general and creativity really like creativity in all of its forms and really don't like not knowing things. And I think it's like the fact that there's so much access to all this stuff nowadays is like it's like it took about 10 seconds for people who, you know what I mean? Like I think if you would cast a lot of those old school audio engineers and musicians like nowadays, I think they both would have understood a lot more about each other's positions now, because they would have had the natural desire to, and they would have had the resources. But at the time, it was like much, you know what I mean? Like, I also think like you were saying,
roles were more defined.
Yeah, the industry itself was like also much more, it's like everything kind of feeds into each other.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about like bringing things down to earth. And I've mentioned this like probably a billion times on the podcast of like when I went to AES in New York in 2017, I was like, oh, they're just people.
Yeah, it's like
and
before,
I was so intimidated by people before that.
But this big like legend, right? It's like this big myth. Like and it's like this. Yeah. And I've also heard you say on the podcast a bunch of times that like that engineers in particular are like just really down to earth people. Like no one's going into it because they want the limelight.
Almost everybody who's been on the show has been so chill and down. I'm like shocked, like how like people who have worked with my favorite artists, how down to earth they are, totally. And how normal and like. It's so crazy. Yeah.
It's 1,000%. It's like, it's just like having the humanity back in it, and like I don't know, that was a huge deal to me. It was like all of this world was like so. First, I didn't even know it existed, and then discovering that it existed, it was so. What's the word I'm looking for? Like it was just so out there, and like out there in the cosmos, and you know what I mean? Like these weren't real people. And even I was talking face to face to somebody, like there was such a level of intimidation and such an imposter syndrome. And I think that, like you were saying, I think as the industry evolves and things get like much less gatekeepy than they were, I think it's like it's much more welcoming and inviting industry than it used to be. And it's the artists are insecure people. You know what I mean? Like it's like
that's true.
Yeah, we're all really worried about our reputation and
how people accept us.
Yeah, how people accept us, and we all think that like because I hear something prettier than me. Prettier than the, or like because I hear a song prettier than the music I make, or a record that was prettier than the one that I produced or engineered. It's like,
oh, I am shit.
Like, right. It's like that
I am a shit artist.
He knows I suck. Right. It's like, it's like, like she knows that it's whatever it is. It's like, and I think,
and it's also we think we suck also because we know what we're doing. Like we're
like you've mixed it like 1,000 times, and it's like you hear all the imperfections.
You hear and you hear like also like the things that you tend to do. Like you have your like totally. your modus operandi.
Yeah. I'm always like afraid that like like once I, get like, hundreds of millions of adoring fans that like, they're all going to be like, you put out like the third album and they'll be like, hang on a second, I'm starting to notice that like the stuff all sounds the same. And it's funny, it's like, hey, deal with that problem when you get there, man.
Yeah.
Like right now when all your stuff is still new to everyone else, it's like you have something valuable to share,
Totally. Like, well, I mean, I hope I'm not throwing anybody who's on the show under the bus, but like, there's like that Fleet Foxes record, which everyone loved. And I couldn't get over the fact that it was the same reverb on every single song. I'm like, I know, I get the reverb trick. It's the exact same reverb on every single song.
Right. Yeah.
The songs are nice, but
they have a sound. Yeah.
I couldn't handle it.
Yeah. It's a very and I think that's like So I will say I happen to love Fleet Foxes, but but I also know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And I think that there's like this is like a good rant to go on. I feel like is like I feel like as like stuff kind of what we're talking about, like as the internet makes things more like accessible and ubiquitous and just everything is everywhere and like no one is any one thing anymore. I think it's kind of it's sort of done an interesting thing on like kind of the other side of the coin where it's like people really feel like they have to really niche down.
Yeah.
And it's like people are it's like, and especially like if I can complain a little bit, honestly, it's like as like as someone who's like trying to make music and also get into the kind of the like the recording side of things also in New York, it's like there's such a in New York in particular, I feel it in the world in general now, and I feel it in New York in particular. I think there's really a very stifling atmosphere of like you have to have a really specific, strong brand. You have to have like this, like a really specific color palette. You know what I mean? Like you have to like your sound, like you have to use the same reverb on every track, right? It's like this idea that like,
really?
Yeah, it's like I mean I don't know about that specifically, but it's like I can imagine Fleet Fox's producer on their first album, and you can see this also because Robin Pecknold, who's basically heart of Fleet Foxes,
right.
I don't know if Fleet Foxes are listening. If Father John Misty gets pissed if I say that on the air, but it's like their old drummer started his own group. But like Robin Pecknold, I think is like a really interesting, diverse songwriter, and there's certainly a sound that's his. But it's like I think a lot of Fleet Foxes fans were pissed when they came out with their third record because their first two sounded like really like themselves, and then they started making like really different kind of sounding music. Everyone was like, like where did the Renaissance Fair stuff go? And like, and I think it's like because he's an artist and he wants to grow and develop and do interesting things, and I think that there's this sense of like if everyone like the internet is so big. There's so and like New York is like this, right? It's like New York is it's almost like a microcosm for the internet. It's like it's this huge metropolis. So the only way that you're going to really make it is if you fit in a pocket, right? And everyone, and it's like the bigger the city gets, and I think also like the bigger the internet gets, and like the bigger tastes get, and the more blurry roles get, the more it becomes important if you want to succeed, like in a very super like financially, you know what I mean? To like really niche down and like really have your specific audience, and like that involves niching down on your aesthetic and your sound and like all this stuff, and it's like
right. But that also kind of makes for very bland, like kind of bland art.
Yeah, it like really crushes creativity a lot of the time, and like I think there's a lot of really cool like.
It's hard also because so many things have been done. Like everyone's heard like every possible genre, and you could access it with your by just a quick YouTube search or Spotify search or whatever. That it's like. Yeah, people are like, this has been done before. So you overthink. It's like genre. You overthink your
I saw TikTok.
Artistry.
I saw TikTok a little while ago that was like so funny. It was like, what do you do in the '60s? And it was like, it was like a an anonymous fan, like POV, whatever, like asking an artist like what kind of music they make in like in the '60s. And it was this guy like who kind of looks kind of stoned, and he's like, oh, make rock and roll, bro. And then it was like, and there's asking someone in like 2022, what do you make? And he's like, oh, I make like like alt post rock, like folk blues. It was like this like 17 genre amalgam of like, and it was like it's funny because it's like you would think that as. So I think that on the one hand, I think that like the more accessible and publicized things get, it's like things are less elitist. They're warmer. It's a more welcoming environment. It's like there's a real like pluralism and openness of resources.
Yeah,
things are the door is open in a way that it's literally never has been before in all of history, which is like really amazing. And like I think the downside of it is like people don't know where to fit anymore, and they're so confused about their roles that it's like they kind of double down on like I'm really going to be this,
right? And there's so much noise, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's so much noise.
So
it's
much
like, how do I
noise.
stick out? I use the same reverb on every single track that no one else is using.
Yeah,
right. And it's like and it's really I think it people pigeonhole themselves a lot because they want to be heard, and I think that it's. And it's like it's hard because it's like it's a trade-off between. I mean, art has always been this way, but it's like a trade-off between making money and making good art. And it's like, and it's like,
and engineering is a trade-off between capturing and deciding if it's the right sound for the record.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, and it's also like, it's like if you want to you know, like I've heard a lot of people talk about the podcast, right? Like the way, and this is for sure the case. I'm not criticizing. It's like, this is definitely, I think the way it is. It's like, if you want to make it, you have to have your sound. You have to niche down. And I think there's something that's totally true. And I think also the more you niche down, the less creative you're going to be. It's just a give and take. It's just a fact. And I think what you want to do ideally, and I think this is what everyone who's talking about this, I think everyone's looking for the same thing, is like kind of trying to find that sweet spot of like, where can I want to live in this place where I can like, where I can be the guy that's known for, you know, creating this sound, whether it's an artist, producer, engineer, whatever it is. But I'm always pushing boundaries a little bit. Like there's always something a little bit weird. Like people come to me because they want a certain kind of sound, but they want to be challenged, right? And like I think, at least I would like to believe that's where everyone's at, and that's kind of the you know what I mean? Like I think if everyone was thinking like that, I think it's like music could be in a really cool place.
Right. So just like a little bit more open than that full niche.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like niche plus open.
Yeah, exactly. Niching is fine. You know what I mean? Like if you don't feel the need to niche and you can make a living by doing that, then like that to me is like that's golden. Like it's you know, like if you can do whatever the hell you want and you can like pay for your house, then like that's you know, that like of course. But if you have to niche down, like if you're not like a regular person and you want to make a living and you want to like have your reputation, then you gotta be good at something and you gotta be known for it. But it's like, I think it's important to never get too caught up. And again, I don't think that's just a producer engineer thing. I think it's an artist thing. I think it's like anyone who's doing anything creative, you got to figure out like, how can I have and there's also, it's also true, right? It's like you do have it's not just like you're trying to cultivate a reputation. Like, you know, I'm not anything. I'm one thing. Like I am Gavi, like you are Ben, like you do sound like yourself, right? And it's like learning how to recognize your sound and develop that is like, it's not artificial. You know, you're not like selling a product. You're like really, like you are finding something consistent about yourself, but you don't want to become a self-parody, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. How do you stay open to new directions and new inspiration?
Yeah, exactly.
That's like back to the multidisciplinary thing.
Yeah, right. It's like, and I guess that's where I always come back to this like Alan Rickman interview, right? It's like, go out, like listen to new shit, like you know, like do something weird, do something out of your comfort zone. Like it's like, I think I was like like for me, it's like I always felt like and I think a lot of, I've heard actually people on the podcast talk about this. I think a lot of people in this industry feel the same way. I was like, I've heard a friend call it former gifted child syndrome, where you were like, you're like a smart kid, you got good grades, you know, you're not so challenged in school. I went to a pretty small school, like there wasn't much of a program if you were like doing well in school, like you were kind of screwed. You were just going to coast. And I felt like I had a hard time when I got kind of to the adult world, like figuring out how to
work hard.
Yeah, I had like a terrible work ethic for a very long time. And I really had to learn how to accept that I suck at things. And it was awesome. It was like the best, because I really, once it's like, it opened up a huge world. Like once you realize that you can like be bad at things and then be good at them later if you give a shit about them and try, it's like, it's all of a sudden, it's like, you can like, any skill is like that, right? It's like, it's no longer scary when you're bad at things.
Right.
And I think that that's what it takes to. It was like really, you know, like I think for me, like I'm still relatively new to the audio game, and it's once I pass the point of like horror at like I suck at this and everyone's gonna know. It's like it's really exciting to keep growing, and like once you kind of learn how to check your ego, it's really and it's
eventually
like,
you will learn to check your ego.
Yeah, right. And it's like that's I think what where, and it's not just I mean the most important part I think is the mental health piece, the spiritual piece. You know, like being able to stay creative and stay interested in yourself, whatever. But it also has an insane benefit for your career. Like, is, you know, just like knowing how to learn new skills and
I think it's one of the
and not become a self-parody, right? Like how to always learn. Like,
I think it's something that I've seen it's almost like everybody I have interviewed, everybody I've met in the industry, like everyone's always learning, always growing. Yeah, it doesn't, you know, it's not like I mean, not to throw plumbers under the bus, but like I don't know. Sure. I don't know if plumbers
that are listening to the
are continuously trying to improve their craft at plumbing. You know what I mean? Sure. But like, I think like audio engineers, music producers specifically, are always trying to get better. Yeah, always learning. Like,
and
it never
better.
ends.
Also, it's like
it never ends.
On top of getting better, it's like getting different. Right? It's like you never want to get stuck. To me, and that's because that's like when you enter self-parody territory. And I think it's like in order to not get stuck, you gotta find things that you suck at. It's just like never stop finding things that you suck at. Like that's, you know what I mean? That to me is so important. And that's where growth comes from. It's like people are, I think when you're a kid, it's like everyone sucks when you're a kid at everything. So it's like you're kind of trying on different hats. Like, you know, I'll learn French and I'll play guitar and I'll I don't know, you know, whatever. I'll pick up running, and like then, you know, you eventually kind of like you suck at everything, and then you get good at one or two things, and then you kind of like, this is who I am. And I think in your 20s, still. I mean, I'm in my 20s, so who knows what comes after this? But I think stuff's still pretty nebulous.
Things get better in your 30s, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's like as you get older, I think people get comfortable, they get lazy, they get it's also you get you're busy. It's like you're like swallowed.
I mean, that's
by
that's what I suffer with. Like I don't have the same time to like grow like I used to because I'm just barely getting in the studio.
Yeah, and I think it's like a huge. I mean, I'm not in any place till you know what I mean. But like, but I think it's I think that it's like whatever it is. Or I'll put it this way, like for where you're at because of like how much like I just have like so much more time than you do because I'm like younger and don't have any kids. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like it's just a totally different world. So like it's like for you to like get off your ass and get into the studio and make something that's like somewhat different than what you did yesterday is like as challenging for yourself as it is for me to like push myself as hard as you were pushing yourself when you were 26.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like it's the same, it's totally proportional. It's like just wherever you're at and like if you're pushing yourself to do something like slightly out of your comfort zone, I think, then it's like you never risk then like or rather if you're not doing that, then you're always risking just
apathy.
Becoming stale. Yeah, and apathy. And it's like and it doesn't, I think my point is not that it should like feel like work. You know what I mean? Sometimes it does. Like work isn't necessarily evil, but it's also like it's exciting and fun and it's rejuvenating to just, like look for something that you suck at. and like that's where it comes from, right? Like it's I don't know.
And that desire to improve.
Yeah.
Well, so let's jump into like all the episodes that you've kind of listened to as the editor and kind of like maybe you could kind of distill something for the audience of something that maybe you took away of like, this is something that everybody kind of talked about. What was like one of the most universal messages that you feel like you kept hearing on the show, and that's something that you've maybe we've already talked about it.
Yeah, that's great, right? Like, you're talking about like high press compression on the drum bus.
No,
it's the ultimate.
I mean, I don't know if that many people talked about that. Even
I was looking at my notes before. I forget who, but I think it was like one guest was talking about that, and I was like, yeah. But that's the universal lesson. No, but in all seriousness, I think it's probably a couple things. For sure, like we're talking about, which is like now I'll go back and say the opposite of everything I just said, which is like what I know you always talk about, and like double down on yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that's your thing, and I think it's truth is that's different than doesn't mean never learn and never change. But whatever it is that or another way of saying it that I really liked, I was looking at my notes before this of I've taken some notes for the last few months on the podcast, nice. And like some of my favorite things that people have said, and I forget who it was that said this, but somebody said, like do what you're emotionally drawn to, which is a different way of saying the same thing, I think. Like double down on yourself.
Yeah.
And I really love that. It's like, if there's something, it reminds me of, I saw a Seth Rogen interview once where he said he found this like kind of paradoxical principle. He found that the more he was writing things that were particular to him, the more universal response he got.
Yes.
So, he's writing, not role models and totally zoning out, but what was Superbad, right? He wrote Superbad, and it's like, he famously said it was a story. It was basically just his childhood. It was like just a hilarious ramped up version of his, what it was like at 15, which is this insanely niche, like Jewish suburban stoner, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a very like small group of people who like had that exact life. But he felt like the more he was talking about, like instead of like, I am trying to reach you, kind of like, I'm trying to reach myself. Like I'm making music that makes me cry or that makes me dance or whatever it is. And it's like, the more you do that, it's that. Yeah.
Speaks to other people.
Yeah. Or rather,
it's
also,
like we're all, all humans, we share so much, even though we feel like we're so different and unique. But like if something is emotionally connecting to me, there's a very good chance it's going to connect with a lot of people.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily going to be like a top 40 thing.
Yeah. If you want to like play MSG, it's like maybe not the move to like bet on yourself. You know what I mean?
Well, look,
which is like a sad reality.
Wolfpack did
great
it.
Call. Yeah. They totally killed it. And it's not like you look at any roster in MSG, it's like there's not a lot of amazing, genuine artists on that list. But it's like, but if you want to lead like a spiritually fulfilling life and like, and always be challenged and more than that, like, like get clients and pay your rent and like get, you know what I mean? Like get people who are coming to you because of like something that you're good at.
Yeah.
And you're passionate at. It's like, it's so much harder to work at something you don't love. And it's like when it becomes a job, it's like, yeah, you can do it, but you'll be working your ass off. You'll burn out. It's like you're not going to do the work as well. Like I can work a 15-hour shift at something that I care about and be moderately tired at the end of the day. And I can work a 6-hour shift at something that I hate and I'll want to kill myself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's just a different, and it's like, if you do things you're emotionally attracted to, it's like, yeah. So that's one thing I think. I think the other thing is, it's also like, I think a lot about this. It's kind of like a form content thing, like
form
content, like form versus content in that, like, you know, to use the Superbad example, like I think like
go on.
Seth Rogen's, you know, it's a very specific
McLovin
childhood, that he's talking about, right? It's like that's actually a great example, right? It's like the overwhelming majority of Americans don't know a McLovin in their lives, but like everyone who loves Superbad like really knows a McLovin.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like, which is hilarious. And I also think it's like the form, but even more than that, it's like everyone knows someone like weird and quirky and hilarious in their lives that they can kind of fit into that role, and it's like, the content of the specific thing might not be relatable to everyone, but because there's a sense of it's such a personal movie. It's like whoever made this movie like really lived through these, like something like this is like a real, like, you know, it's a hilarious comedy, but it's also it's like there's a lot of sincerity in that movie. It's like someone really like there's a lot of love and it's a very precious movie. I think it's funny to say it like that, but I think like that's certainly how Seth Rogen felt about it, and it shows when he made the movie.
Yeah,
you know, and I think like a lot of, and it's like it's like the form rather than the content, right? Like the content might be unique, but the preciousness is something that everyone can relate to. Like I think that a lot of people feel that way about their childhoods, or like hilarious people that they knew that like, you know, they used to make fun of when they were kids or whatever, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like some quirky thing about how you grew up. And I think it's the same way with music and, you know, like the arts in general is like, if you're creating something that you're like really emotionally attracted to, then someone might hear and be like, I've never heard music like this before. But it's made so lovingly and so, or so cerebrally or whatever it is, like something so off and interesting and unique about this that I have to listen to it. And I think that's where newness comes from in music. It's like more form than content, right? If that makes sense. It's like, if I was trying to make something new, but I was trying to make something new, I was like trying to reach you with it, then it sounds artificial and sincere.
Forced.
Yeah, it sounds forced, and you can hear the, you know, like the weird blend of Logic plugins. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but if I'm just trying to be me and I just do it really lovingly, then it's like people hear it and it catches people's ears. I think I like to think.
Right. You're saying so the form is really the authenticity.
Yeah, it's how much you love what you're doing that or how passionately you feel about it. That's what communicates with people more than what it is.
Right.
I think it's like I love, you know, like old time folk recordings. Like, you know, listen to like Carter family stuff from like the 30s and 40s that like, you know, there's like, it's like vinyl scratch all over it and it sounds like shit. And I love like really gorgeously produced, you know, like hip hop stuff coming out now. And it's like what they have in common to me is just like both the people doing it just really believed in what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like much more than it's like doesn't really matter what kind of music it is.
Nice. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great lesson.
Yeah.
let's all be authentic to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, with our art and it's hard sometimes as service providers, but we have to figure out a way to kind of do that for our artists, and hopefully those are the people that keep coming back to us.
Yeah, I think that's actually I think that's a really good thing you said. is that we're service providers.
I mean, often,
at least in this capacity. Yeah, like the way we're talking about.
Yeah,
and it's also like it's in that realm too. I think it's a form content thing. You're not trying. I think a bad producer. I don't mean someone who's, you know, bad at their skills, but someone who's bad in the way it counts, right? And really, like, if they're not nice to work with, and they're not treating people nicely. To me, it's like a bad producer is someone who says, like, you need to put this chord there. It's like your content is wrong. Like, no content is wrong. There's no such thing as that. The form might be wrong. You know, I don't like. You might not be at like. There's something uncomfortable and awkward, I think, about being like, you might not be at a skill level to do this, and that's like a very technical thing you got to broach. Like, how do we bring somebody in? Like, how can, you know, whatever it is. But it's or just, you know, let it sit, whatever, you know, maybe that's a different issue. But what I'm talking about is more like how like I don't think you really believe in what you're doing, you know, and that's really important, I think, because what you're saying is like, I believe in you as a person and as an artist, and what you're playing in the studio right now. The content is, it can be beautiful, it can be crap. It's like, I don't care. Like, if you believe in it, and I want to feel that you believe in it, right? And I think a good producer can be. I think you don't need to be harsh in any way. Like, if you can, the best way is always to do this in like the most welcoming, warm, friendly way. But if it feels like they're hitting a point where, like, you know, like, I think like the tough love thing is kind of like, it's sort of taboo, but I think it's like, it's only appropriate insofar as you got to be careful though. You really have to mean it. But I think like if you really believe in your artist and you feel like the form isn't coming through, then it's, you know what I mean? Then like that's not going to communicate also to listeners, and they're not. And it's like you want to create something that you're proud of, then you want to create something that you believe in. And I do think to some extent it is kind of a producer's job to be able to elicit that sincerity out of artists. But you have to mean it. Again, like it can't be an ego thing. You can't be like, I want to hear something that I love. It's like, I know that you love what you're doing and I don't believe you right now.
You have to wait till they trust you.
Yeah, that's true. You can't
you
bump
have to
in
have
right
already
away
built up all that trust.
Totally. Yeah, it's a very intimate, delicate thing. And you can't walk into someone and be like, you don't believe yourself. You sound like shit. Like that's
no, of course not.
Yeah, like that breaks someone down. And yeah, but there's something to when you do have a trusting relationship with someone, there's a really delicate, sensitive way of telling someone like, listen, like you have something really incredible here. And like, like you're not in the zone right now. Like you're not producing the thing that I know you're in love with. You know, and I think that like learning how to elicit that passion from somebody is a really difficult but special thing, I think. And that's where, I think that's where good music comes from. It's like people who are in that zone when they create. And a good producer is able to foster that environment.
Yeah. Man, production is hard, eh?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's like you got to learn. I think like in all jobs, soft skills are always like a huge deal, right? But in production, it's everything. It's like you really it's like you really ruin the product if you make people uncomfortable. Yeah. And it's like you're both sitting there because I also think like on the other end, like I think you have producers who kind of take that too far. Like I think there's people out there who are like, I feel like there's so many horror stories in like the Hollywood of, the Hall of Fame of production about this. It's like producers who like it's weird, man. It's like people will say stuff like, oh, like producers will say to their artists, like, I love what you're doing so much that like you need to stop treating it like shit. And you know what I mean? It's like, oh, like it's like we both love music so much, so like why don't you step your game up, kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like I think that's just real bad.
It's too much.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like you gotta like there's a person in front of you, and the person and the art are not really different. I think it's like we're here making. I think that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like you're trying to. I think a lot of producers try to separate the art from the artist, and there's this like I am because we both love the art so much, I'm gonna kind of whip you into shape. Because we want to create something that's really gonna like affect humanity and whatever it is. But it's like that's the reason it's gonna affect humanity is because it's a person speaking, whether verbally or musically, and it's like you gotta
wow,
yeah, you know what I mean? Like yeah, like you have to
no for sure. Listen, like
you have to really
artists like for sure tie up their identity with their music, and it's all tied up. And like like I remember when I sent off my album to get mastered, I was so. I felt so vulnerable. Like this outside person who has more experience than me is going to listen to my songs and
tell me what sucks, right?
Yeah,
it's like horrifying.
And I,
and I think
so it's just like wow. Like I think I've evolved a lot since then, and I don't necessarily tie up my art with my person, or I'm able to kind of dissect those a bit more.
Yeah, sure.
But separate them.
But you still, I assume, believe in what you do. Right? Yeah. Like there's still you in the art that you make.
Yeah.
Like it's not just this like technical, I'm just gonna like make a catchy song. You know what I mean? Which is sometimes that's a ton of fun. You know what I mean? Like what's that old Beatles tale? We'll write ourselves a swimming pool.
Yeah. Well, these days I'm mostly helping other people with their songs. And I'm just trying to like strike that right balance between like, what about this idea versus do you like that? Like, and if an artist doesn't really respond to what I'm doing, or like they say, oh, everything is great, like then I don't know if I'm on a good path at all, because I kind of waiting for the artist to kind of give me their contra, what's the word, like that counterbalance of like, no, that is really good, because like I need that extra affirmation, because I need it to be true for them also. And
that's what I'm saying. It's like you want to elicit from them. I think what you're doing in those conversations is like you're trying to elicit some kind of belief. Yeah, that's what it's like I keep coming back to. It's like, I always feel this way. It's like are you like, if you're happy with this, then I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, right. Because like I want you to tell me that I'm doing something wrong, because that means that you believe in something.
This is how I would do it, because that's what I'm inclined to do. Right. This is where my brain goes. And if I was making for myself, I'd be happy with this. Yeah. But do you like this?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, or like the technician thing, right? It's like what I'm doing now, like I know that I'm good at my job and I know it sounds technically really nice, but like I need to know that you feel that this is sincere. Because if you don't feel like it's sincere, then no one else is going to feel like. If you don't feel like it's sincere, and you've heard this 1,000 times, no one else is going to. They're going to scroll past it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. No one's going to give a shit about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's way beyond what I'm thinking, but I like that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But it's like the same kind of same too. Like it's like it's not like I'm thinking that like when I'm making music myself or like working with anybody else or anything like that. But I think it's true that like there's if you're like, you really, it's like, to me, it's always about eliciting belief and sincerity. And it's like, and I do think that, and again, I think that like that sincerity is wrapped, to some extent, it's wrapped up with that person's identity. And I think there's a healthy distance you can have from it. You don't need to die on that hill for sure. Like, I think that's kind of the other side of the coin. But it's like artists who just, wrap their whole, like this song, no one listened to my song. So like, I'm just a worthless piece of shit and nobody cares about me. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's a very healthy distance to be had from that.
Right.
But I also
a lot of times those are artists that don't release anything because they're too
so precious.
They're too self-conscious, too precious.
Yeah, exactly. And they might be really amazing artists too, right? Which is like a shame.
Right.
But I do think there's like, on the other end, it's like, there is like, there's something to be said for like, there's you in what you're doing. And if you're holding back you in what you're doing, then I do think it kind of falls on the producer to be like, I'm going to make, ideally in a really positive way, like a healthy environment for you, for this to come out. Like I want, like, you're not, something about you, like this belief isn't coming out. And it's like, and it's not about the song, it's about you. It's like you, a person, something about you doesn't feel comfortable right now, or is in doubt about what you're saying, or is just out of the zone, or you know what I mean? And it's like, figuring out how to get that is like a real tough thing. But it's where good art comes from, I think.
Yeah. So in summation, like we need to be sincere about what we're doing and what we're bringing out of people, but also like,
that's you sensitive in every way. You need to be sensitive to the music, sensitive to the person,
right?
Sensitive, you know what I mean?
But also figure out a way to like carry it across the finish line. Because a lot of art doesn't make it across the finish line, and so we have to figure out
right, like kind of tempering that, right? Like the middle way. You know what I mean? Like you got to
because otherwise you can't move on. And like I tell so many artists, like this is not going to be your masterpiece. Like you need to just put it out, do the best we can, and move on, and then eventually you'll have something.
Yeah, it's something I love. It was in that change gears a little bit. It was like kind of go from the opposite angle. This is something I saw in that same Seth Rogen interview actually, where he was like talking about working with Judd Apatow, and when he first started working with him, Judd Apatow was like, he's like, I want you to write me like 100. Apparently, this is to a lot of his writers. He said, I want you to write me 100 single page treatments of just like movie summaries, just shit out 100 ideas, which is insane. And Seth Rogen, I remember it's this joke. He's like, maybe he just like wanted a bunch of movies he could rip off of his writers, but he thinks that the reason Judd Apatow made all his writers do that is because it taught them how to be less precious with their writing, and how to approach it as a craft, right? But I do, and it's also like I know like fiction writers always, and nonfiction writers, like writers always talk about that, like pick up and just write 1,000 words every day. It doesn't matter whether they're good or not. It's like just over and over and over again. But I think it's like, and that's the distance piece of it. Right? Is like be distanced from what you're doing, approach it as a craft, know how to recognize it, like what are the kind of objective goods and bads here, be able to just work quickly under pressure and with deadlines, right?
Yeah.
For someone else. And it's like, right, that's the other thing, right? It's not even these aren't your, you're not profiting off of this idea. They're not emotional to you. Like someone else needs them to put them on a screen, right? And it's like, but on top of all that, it's like the reason that it's good to have the distance is because then, I think to me at least, when something that is your masterpiece, when something that you do believe in, that you are precious about, that you are afraid to release and be intimate, vulnerable with, because it's so intimate to you, comes to you when you're kind of blessed with that, whatever, like wherever the hell that stuff comes from, it's like you're so prepared for it because you've spent so much time crafting these things that aren't precious. Like your skill set, it's like those things I think are like about developing a skill set so that when the important stuff happens, you are in a good place. And that's, I guess, that's sort of why I feel like I'm towing the line here. It's like, I think that's important for like artists to be like, not be too precious about your work, not get wrapped up to identity, not get your identity too wrapped up in it, so that when something comes along that your identity is totally wrapped up in, you can treat it appropriately. And you're like, I'm not going to screw this up. I'm going to kind of do what it deserves. I'm going to feel really sincere about it. I'm good enough to give it the form that it deserves, and whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of how I feel about it.
And then sometimes the things that are the biggest things or the most important things happen very, very fast. And
sometimes
without overthinking it.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah. And it's like, but that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, it's like Dylan talked about, there's a great story between Dylan and Leonard Cohen that Leonard Cohen asked him, Dylan asked him how long it took to write Hallelujah. It's like some apocryphal story. And Leonard Cohen was like, it took me like 2 years and like, had like famously he had like 100 notebooks with like alternative verses and he like culled them down, and it's like there's this like biblically perfect song. Yeah. And then he asked Dylan how long it took him to write like a Rolling Stone, and he was like 20 minutes. And it's not a better or worse thing. It's just like, and I think that like for Dylan, it's like from such a young age, he was just writing like 5 songs a day. You know what I mean? And it's like, so that when the masterpiece comes, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like he's so used to writing things that aren't precious that when something that was precious came to him, it was so easy for him to turn it out. Yeah. It's like, I think that's why, like, masterpieces don't come quickly to people who don't work quickly on shitty things.
Right.
All the time. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's the Beatles, right? Like the Beatles, just they would go to each other's houses and just like, we need a couple songs for the record. Let's go.
Yeah, they would just it's like,
they would literally turn it out.
Yeah, and like that's where the masterpieces came from. Like I don't think like, I don't know, like I love You Never Give Me Your Money. Right, it's one of my favorite.
Me too, by the way.
Yeah, super underrated.
One of my favorite. Yeah, it's like I think that might be one of my favorite top 3
me
Beatles
too.
songs.
And it's like 6 different songs in one, and they're like completely different emotional spectrums, and they're all perfectly. Yeah. It's an unreal song, and it's like the bass in that tune is always like all over the place, and it's like it's such a great tune, and there's such an emotional like dynamism in that song. Like it starts out just this like makes me want to cry, gorgeous, weird, eerie thing. And then it's just like, what is that? Out of college, money spent, see no future, pay no rent.
Like
and it's just,
blues shuffle thing.
Yeah, all the money's gone away. You know, and it's like 2 seconds after that. And it's like, you can't, like, it's such a masterfully crafted song. And it's so clear. That song is particular. It's such a great example. It's so obvious that like they only were able to come up with a song like that because they were just writing so much bullshit for so long that it's so easy to turn. It's like when you have these beautiful ideas, it's like, it's just, there's such an effortlessness about that stuff. And it's like the masterpieces don't come out spontaneously if you don't do the Judd Apatow's, you know, like 100 single page treatments.
I talked about this recently on the podcast about like the improv. The thing that makes improv great is if you say yes and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like instead of saying like, no, let's not do that. Let's try this. Like if you're always yes anding, you're going to come up with like
and it's
crazy,
a muscle. It's great. It's like the more
stuff.
improv is like, anyway, it's like crazy. Going into improv is always really crazy because it's like, you ever seen improv, like a live improv show? And you're
CCL?
Like, yeah.
Chicago City Limits?
And it's like totally. And it's like when you see a good improv show like that, it's like, it's like, at least I feel like an idiot. Like, you know what I mean? Like I walk through my daily life and like, I don't know, I think I'm a funny guy, you know, but like you go to like improv people and you're like, these people are insane. Like, how do they do this? And it's like, cause they practice.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, cause it's like, it's crazy to think of, we usually think of practice in like a really technical way. Like it's like getting your scales, but it's like understanding how to respond to spontaneity and how to channel creativity. Like those are muscles. And like, the more you do them, the less heavy they become and the less of a big deal it becomes to like, I don't know. It's like in New York, I meet a lot of people who are like kind of singer-songwriters who are, you know, not that I'm a nobody, you know what I mean? I'm just like a random singer-songwriter, but I do think that I write a lot and I take what I do seriously. And I also take it, because I take it seriously, I don't take it too seriously. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that I'm right about. And I really believe that. And I meet a lot of songwriters in New York who are equally as nobodies as I am, who I'm like, kind of a little skeptical of their chances of success sometimes because I talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, like kind of what you were talking about. Like, you know, they're very precious about their work and they're very like, they'll play the same song at every single show because it's like, this is my showstopper and it's like, whatever it is. And it's like, it's not like, if this doesn't make it, you're done for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, they're so precious about everything that it's like, you could be right that this is a masterpiece, but like you just like, there's no, like you're too much of your ego is bound up with it and you're going to be crushed if it doesn't work. And it's going to paralyze you creatively and you're not going to make maybe the next masterpiece that you really should be creating, whatever should means, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like that you'll be so satisfied with yourself if you create. And also, and B, it's like if you were, who knows how much better that masterpiece would be and how much more of a chance it would have at succeeding if you had spent, you know, every other day before that just churning out a bunch of nonsense that you just had fun creating.
Or just moving on a little bit, you know?
Yeah, it's like, who knows how much better that masterpiece would have been if you had developed like better writing skills, making nonsense that sucks all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, because there would have been little like, you know, you come up with the first section of You Never Give Me Your Money. And then it's like, who knows how much more fun could it have been if you like had spent all these years writing nonsense pop tunes and like blues shuffles and you just shoved it in the second half and it like totally makes the song. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Imagine if it just ended there. It would have been
it would have been a really pretty,
like little thing.
Gorgeous little thing. And it's like, it doesn't, the epicness, it doesn't have like the change in emotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, well, it could have been like, I don't know what a good example, you know, would be for like a Beatles song, but like,
yeah, sure. Right. It's like, like Her Majesty or something.
Yeah. Right. Just like throw it on at the end of the album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Totally. Amazing. Okay. So I think we've kind of like pontificated on art and being artistic and being precious but not too precious, but also all these things. Let's this is the end of 2022.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to release this episode on Sunday.
Yeah.
Last episode of the year, and kind of just like look forward to what's to come.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about what you're, I don't know, having like with the backdrop of like, hey, I've like edited a year's worth of podcasts where I've heard people that are doing amazing stuff in audio. You know, like what their thoughts are, their philosophies, blah, blah, blah. Like what are you thinking about moving into 2023 as like, what will be like your, I don't know, your goals, a few things that you're going to take from this podcast and apply to your life?
For sure. Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think for me, they're a little more abstract, I think, than like specific. Like by this point, I want to record this many artists or do this many things or whatever it is. It's like, well, okay, I'll answer the most boring way first. I think in the most concrete way, I'm like trying to build a kind of little crappy makeshift home studio. I got an extra room in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I'm trying to just like meet everyone that I can and have friends. I would say I'm trying to do it in a really not professional way on purpose. I'm trying to just like meet friends and artists casually and just be like, don't worry about money. Come over, let's record a little bit. Just like screw around in my second bedroom and just like see what happens. Yeah. And you know, I got some good equipment. It's like a somewhat crappily treated space, and you know what I mean. And just kind of like get the reps in, get used to it, build community. And build a little bit of a rep for myself in the neighborhood, but also just like, but like also just like have fun messing around with people and having like whatever the opposite of a stigma is, just like a positive association with the behind the scenes part of making music. Because I think. And the reason for that is that I was so intimidated about all of it for such a long time that I'm kind of trying to like create a positive association with all of it. Like I don't, you know what I mean? But in a little bit of a bigger way, I think just like I don't know, maybe it's the same thing. But it's like trying to have less baggage with creativity, and specifically on like the audio front, whether it's like recording, production, whatever, just trying to like, no one needs to hear this. Like, cause I think it's like the more, like we're saying, right. It's like the more precious that I feel about it, the scarier it is to get up and do it. Right. And I'm trying to just like, not like churn out a ton of content all the time, but just get used to like, you know, make beats in my bedroom and
there doesn't have to be anything attached to it.
Yeah, right? Exactly, which is really nice. And like, I think it's like that's where you get the reps from.
I don't remember if this predates you or if this is around your time of editing with Damian Taylor. I don't know if you edited his episode.
Before me, I think.
I think
it was right before me.
He talks about like waking up in the morning and just like rolling out of bed and just churning out a piece of art for like 50 minutes without like any expectation of anything happening. But you're just like, you've set your day off and you've like accomplished what you need to accomplish.
Yeah, so I'm very good at that with guitar. I just roll out of bed and screw around because it's like I think it's a funny thing also. It's like, I think there's an insecurity that like a lot of artists have about like, or anyone in this world has of like, I need to tell everyone and prove to everyone how, like, I need to tell everybody how comfortable I am with it all the time. Because I'm not comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like when you really love something and you're really comfortable with it, you don't really need to talk about it ever because it's always there. Like in some ways I play less, I think probably like objectively I play a lot less guitar than I ever have in my life, but I feel like a better guitarist than I've ever been.
That's exactly how I feel about bass, by the way.
Yeah. It's like,
I've never played less bass because I'm gigging less than I ever have.
Right. I've never felt like a better guitarist.
And I mostly play bass when I'm recording bass.
Right.
But I feel like my rhythm has never been better. Been like when I do rehearsals with bands, like I've never been more locked in playing the most appropriate notes.
Totally. Because you're working on like, it's like the Alan Rickman thing again. Like you're doing other things that like always influence the thing that you're doing.
Right.
But it's also like, and more than you're living in the world. You know what I mean? But also on top of that, it's like, it's not that, precious. It's like, or it's maybe rather it's like so precious to me that it's like it's always going to be there. I don't need to guard it all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I'm definitely there with guitar. I'm very far from that. I think with production engineering, mixing, that kind of thing. So every time I do it, it's still like I have something to prove. You know what I mean? And I'm trying. I'd like to make this year about trying to get over that and just trying to be like, it doesn't matter if I succeed with this and you know like whatever it is and. At least in the personal creative way, like in the stuff I really want to be making. I mean, I'm trying to like, you know, do it for a living, but like, but in so far as the things that I really care, the kind of music I really care about making and spaces and skills I care about learning and spaces I care about being in. I'm trying to just get over the part of me that's like, I want other people's validation and approval and just like, I want to just do this because I enjoy it. And because right now I'm certainly not at a point where I can roll out of bed and like just like make a beat in 15 minutes or like want to mix that much or anything like that. And I think that's because I have all this like riding on it professionally. because I'm like at the beginning of my journey with it. And I think the more I get over that, the better I'll be at it. Right. That's always the paradox.
Yeah.
The more you care about people's opinion, the worse you're going to be at the things that you want their approval for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like on a personal note, like I've been in therapy for like over a year now.
Right.
And, getting over a lot of things like people pleasing and having other people, validate me or like feel like I need to be, approved by these other people in order, and that like understanding that's an issue I have and taking that burden off is like a big deal. Cause then it's like, I'm not necessarily making this because I need to be impress somebody else.
It's really hard to do with mixing, production engineering, all that stuff, to like the not music side, the not like artistic side of things, or artist side of things, maybe a better word.
Right. The more like technical things.
Yeah. The more technical aspects, I think it's like extra tough because like you said, it's the service industry. So in the most superficial way, like you literally need to get people's approval. You know what I mean?
All the time.
Like it's like I can write a song and really like it, and it makes me smile or want to cry or dance or whatever it is. And then I go play it at a show and like people aren't into it. People don't pay attention. They don't like it. It's like, you're always like kind of depressed for a minute, but you're always like, yeah, but like I've been doing this for half my life and this is a good tune and I like it and it makes me emotional. So I know it's good, right? It's like, it's kind of easier to, it's easier said than done, obviously, but I think there's a certain level of confidence that like I wrote this because I thought it was good and I still think it's good. And it's really hard to do that when you're like mixing a track. Cause it's like, I think you have to get to a certain level where like when you're mixing to be like, I don't care if anyone else likes this, I love it. Because when you're mixing, it's like, it's fun to, and we're recording, whatever. It's like, if the artist you're recording for and or their audience isn't into it, then like you did a bad job. And that's what it's for. So it's very different. Not necessarily. I think there's certainly a level of like artistry you can get to it where you're like, I believe in what I'm doing in a mix. But I think it's a higher threshold than like literally like writing a solo acoustic tune or like writing a tune for a band. You know what I mean? Like it's different than writing. It's like, and I think that's also why it's easy to get wrapped up in the approval thing with it.
Yeah.
Because approval, it's like, it's part of the job, you know what I mean? In a different way than with writing. And that's something that really bugs me out. And I'm kind of trying to get more to a space of just like,
I still get like butterflies sometimes when I send out a mix or I'm waiting for somebody to approve it, or if they're typing on WhatsApp or something. And it's like, oh shit, maybe they don't like it.
Right.
And then for me, that's like conjured up with, that's like tied up with like, maybe they don't like me, or maybe I'm useless and invalid. And
totally.
All like this identity that I've mixed up with all of this.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, you're sitting there making a living out of it. And you're like, how am I ever going to make a living doing this if whatever? And you're like already making a living doing it. And you're like still in doubt about whether you're capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, So I'll say that.
So that's another conversation.
Yeah.
Like, am I successful? Like people think I'm successful, but I don't think I'm successful yet.
Crazy.
Do I want to be successful?
Yeah. Always a bigger fish. Yeah.
All these things.
Right. And it's like, So I think my short answer is, goals is like, be less precious. Try to make it like more of an ever-present thing in my life, and therefore something that I don't paradoxically like don't need to work at that much or that often, because it's just something that I just around and I like it, and I'm around it a lot, and I don't need others' approval with it. And if I'm bad at it, then I'm admitting that I'm bad at it and I want to grow, whatever it is. So I think that's kind of one thing.
Going back.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the other hand, and then sort of on the other end of things, it's also something I'm trying to build a career with and like trying something. So that's in the next year. At the same time, I'm also, like I'm about to start interning at a studio over in Williamsburg, as a just like recording assistant, and trying to, and it's a lot of pop stuff, which is good because I'm not a huge pop guy. So it's like, it's actually kind of good, I think, to like, on the other hand, like be around areas where, I guess it's another way of getting to the same space of not preciousness, like be areas where you don't maybe even like the music that much. So you can like really approach the audio with like the aspect of it with like a really kind of clear ear. It's like, maybe like, like kind of like learn how to pay my rent with that and like not tie up my identity with it, and like kind of like build something up, like build a reputation and a career, and do more gigs for just like right now I'm at a point also where it's just like be a yes man to everybody.
Yeah. You got to go through that stage.
Yeah. Like do any gig that comes up, and then separately at home, kind of like sort of keep that separate from my creative self, and learn how to like treat it like a job. I think those are I would say those are two kind of opposite but complementary things.
Yeah. It's like, it's like all of our identity, but we have to also parse it out. We also have to sometimes merge it and then sometimes unmerge it.
It's very weird. Yeah, it's very weird. It's a weird. No one talks about this, man. It's like weird. Music's a weird world.
Yeah, I mean, I think I already kind of said it in this conversation, but like just what we do with audio engineering and, production and whatever, it's just that weird combination of like, am I making it like, am I technically improving it, and am I also making it better? And it's just like, that makes it like so difficult to like, to parse. Cause like technically better is like, okay, is it technically better? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Is it suiting the song better? Yes or no? Like totally, it could be completely different. Like,
yeah, it's really like, yeah, this is backtracking a little bit, but I think there's like a, in terms of being able to like evaluate your own art. I think that there's a, or someone else's art, right? That you're like have a really integral part in. It's like, you just like ear fatigue. There's like spiritual ear fatigue too. You know what I mean? It's not just like, I can't hear the frequency anymore because I've just like been obsessively listening to it for an hour and it's like just blended with everything else. There's also like, it's just like, I've just spent so much time with this piece of art that like, I don't know, and this piece of music that like, I don't know like where it's at anymore. There's a,
well, first of all, time is the number one.
Yeah. There's like,
objectifier.
There's this, yep. So I was going to say, there's a Stephen King quote that I love where he talks about how it kind of combines a lot we were talking about like just like sheer productivity and also like being able to recognize masterpiece and whatever. It's like, I heard him once say that he'll write a novel, he'll relatively quickly, he does for a living, and then he'll put it in, he has like a drawer, like a specific drawer, I think in his desk, if I'm remembering correctly. He'll put it in his drawer and then he'll write another novel. And then he'll go, which is insane, right? And then he'll go back.
An entire novel.
Yeah, like a whole novel. Yeah. And then he'll read, which I guess for him is like the equivalent of like a song or a mix for us, or like, you know what I mean? It's
probably
like,
a bit more.
Yeah, but it's like, just proportionally, it's like just how crazy good he is.
How long does it take him to write a book? A
few months, I think. Yeah. But it's like he'll go back and like sometimes like a year or two later, and he'll go back at the novel and then he'll edit it. And it's like someone else wrote it, right? And it's like, I've really come to believe like editing is 90% of creativity. And I think like,
really?
Yeah, it's like when I don't know 90%, but like, but it's like when it comes to, it's a big percent, but I'll scale it back there maybe. But I think that like,
I guess we need to edit these podcast episodes a bit more.
Yeah, legit, man. Just kidding. Go back and like remix all the podcasts.
Yeah. No.
But I think that like, in terms of being able to objectively evaluate your art, like, just like distance and time. And it's such a skill to be able to, it's like kind of funny. You have to sort of like enter a mode when you're working that's like
flow.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say almost the opposite of flow, that too, but like not like I suck, but like kind of like you have to be self-critical when you're working the whole time. You have to be like, this could always be better. This could always be better. This could always be better. And then you really have to learn how to not take that into when the work is done. Like when you enter like either mastering or just like you have to like at some point.
I would say the other way around.
Same way.
And like I don't know if you remember the interview with Mikko Gordon.
Yeah, of course.
And he was just saying like working really, really fast. It's a vibe.
Interesting, yeah.
You're in a flow. Yeah. You capture it, and then afterwards you check it out. Well, what did we do a good job? And it's like almost like, and also I've talked with other people about this. It's like, let's finish this production and then like see if we did a good job, because like you have to see that production and then we'll go back through to the end, and then
no, I think you're right. I think we're saying two sides of the same coin. I think what you're talking about is more like the work. It's like when you're like the work itself is like work quickly,
you have to be
don't
fearless.
worry about it.
You have to be fearless,
be done and then like
recording.
Analyze it. I totally agree. I think what I'm talking about is more emotional or like spiritual. It's like when you're working yourself, you kind of have to be like don't rest on my laurels. Don't think this is good enough. Like always look for, you know what I mean? Like kind of like, it's like you could be in a flow state and do that, I guess is what I'm saying. Like this is missing here. This is missing here. Like, let me kind of bump this up here and like really just, you know what I mean? And then you have to learn how to step back and be like, this is enough. I'm like, or is it enough? Right. Like, like this is enough. I'm enough. Like not, you have to exit like in yourself, almost like emotionally, like problem seeking mode, and learn how to like listen to it like a regular listener, kind of like, is this good? Like, do I enjoy it? And like not, and like shut off the part of your brain or ignore the part of your brain that's like,
can this
I
be
suck
better?
Because I've done this. Yeah, exactly. Like you have to learn how to be at peace with it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it can be better, and maybe it's like, okay, now I've learned that.
But learning how to say that objectively, like not being too attached to that statement when you say it. Like it can be better, but it's not because I suck or I'm bad at what I do.
Right.
It's because it can be better, and I'm going to make it better, and then I'm going to stop when it's better. Like you know what I mean? Like knowing how to
get objective.
Yeah.
Listen objectively. Maybe time.
Yeah.
Maybe a year
time.
Later.
Some kind of distance. Time is best, and if you can't have time, then learning how to cultivate a part of yourself that's like, okay, I've worked a lot, I've tried a lot. Now I'm just gonna listen, and I'm gonna try to not judge. You know, it's like.
Yeah,
that's something. That's a really like you got like the physical ear when you're working, and then like the metaphysical ear afterward.
Yeah, I really knowing how to
listen. You know,
I really like to listen to what I worked on like later at night or whatever. After like when I'm doing dishes, I'll put my AirPods on.
You like switch brain modes. You know,
and I'm in a different zone. I'm in the kitchen. I'm like, you know, whatever it is,
Yeah.
And then I just like listen back to what I did. I'm either really proud of myself or like, oh.
Or you're like, oh, I fucking, so yeah, totally.
Yeah, and more times than not, I'm overall proud. But then there's a couple things that like, oh, I realized like
you go back,
I didn't realize
you do like a second pass.
Oh, I realized that piano riff was not very good.
Yeah,
like, well, we're gonna change that.
Yeah, it's like obvious shitty frequency that you didn't catch because you were just like listening over and over and like
like the acoustic guitar sounds like crap.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
totally happens.
What about you, man? What's
oh yeah, I'm just looking at my notes here.
Yeah, no, what are your goals? For
my goals are very different because I feel like I'm just at like a different stage of life right now.
Yeah.
So much of my goals are making this more sustainable, more able to support my family while I'm doing this work.
Yeah.
And like it's all about like, can I systematize this? Like I'm just in a, like, I just need to provide for my family. Like, that's where I'm at. Like,
totally.
I have 2 kids now, and it's like, this is not a joke. I need to make money.
Yeah.
Like, I need to make money. And, that's going to be a lot of different things. But again, I don't only do, music production. I do some other things also. Right. And like, I'm trying to scale like some like podcast work that I do for other people and figure out how I can like, bring in more clients, make more money, still provide a really great service.
Turn it into a real business.
Yeah. So I'm doing that as like a side business of like having other people edit. If I have enough clients, you'll have more work also. So having other people doing editing for me while I'm sweetening sound, queuing everything and trying to like do some of that.
Yeah.
But to a point where it's scalable for me and that I don't have to spend all my time doing this kind of work. So I can also do the music work, which is really what I also have work doing and I'm passionate about on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to like segment different. I've always been wearing a ton of hats.
Yeah.
I've never niched down to like I'm only mixing records in LA. That's never happened for me, and I don't know if that will ever happen for me.
Do you want that? Do you like that? Do you like the diversity of like the chaos?
I do and I don't, because I get stressed out by chaos, but I do get joy from doing a lot of things. And like I don't know if I'll be able to ever take off the bass straps. Because getting on stage still gives me so much joy.
Right.
And like I just did a gig with my friend. He did his first concert as like an artist.
Cool.
And it was just fun to like get up on stage with a band and play music.
Yeah,
and,
I saw
like,
that clip.
And mean it, and like dig into the bass and like actually like play out and be Right.
But like doing 3 or 4 different things and getting like fulfilling that part, like satisfying that part of you that wants like diversity and a little bit of chaos doesn't mean you have to do 16 different things.
Right. No, totally not. And I think
like,
also
you don't have to niche down, but you also don't have to do 90. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think like I'm very attracted to mixing because I could suit my lifestyle a little bit better than producing,
right?
Because it's more segmented.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm a better producer or mixer, and I don't know. I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like, also depends on the genre. Like, I'm better at some genres in terms of producing than others, but mixing I could do more genres.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But like also, it's I think I'm slowly. I've said this on the air, but like I'm slowly trying to like filter out my life, so I'm doing more of the things I want to do and less of the things I don't want to do.
Right.
And I think I'm going to be slightly becoming more and more picky with production projects I take on because it's so emotionally like for me it's some real emotional labor.
I've heard you say this, you get really attached.
I get really attached, and also like I'm working with a person and like we're bringing their creation to life.
So it's like you're working with 4 artists at a time, minimum, and they're and they're working with one producer. Right. So it's like they, you know what I mean? Like they put themselves on you. Like it's a, you know what I mean? And it's like, which that's, I've been on the other side of it too. Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why we go into the.
Well, I love it. I love it, but I love my family more.
Right.
And so I know, and for me, it's important that I'm going to be a present dad and be around and like all these things.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to figure out how I can like sustainably keep doing what I'm doing at like a good level. And so like I want it to be good. Like if I'm working with an artist, like I want it to be like.
You would be really in the room.
I really want to be like I want it to be like music that I'm proud of, they're proud of.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to slowly be a little bit more judgmental about what I take on as a production client.
Yeah.
And try to do more like mixing to kind of fill the gaps from other from productions I might have taken on.
Yeah.
And with like also like for me it's like business planning at this point.
1,000%. How's it? Is it annoying for you, or is it like there's something satisfying?
It's interesting. It's satisfying. I like it. It's just been hard because I've had a very tough 5 months for very good reasons. Like thank God we have like a beautiful baby daughter.
Yeah.
but she's been a very difficult baby.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the audience has noticed me getting more and more tired and loopy on the air because I think the episodes have actually been great.
Yeah, they have.
Thanks to the artists. Thanks to the guests.
Yeah.
But I'm personally getting more and more tired, and like I feel like I'm like barely holding on to the podcast in terms of like just like how much energy I have in a day.
Yeah.
And like so like it's just like that's been my life for the last 5 months, and like we're finally starting to figure out a routine, sending to daycare.
Cool.
Maybe getting a little bit more sleep at night.
Yeah, like routine. Right.
So I'm still kind of like swimming to the surface right now from this.
Right. Routine is going to hit your job
experience.
and your family life at the same, not the same time, but like in different ways.
It all
right?
affects
like,
everything.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah,
like
I know.
finding your routine will also happen at the same time.
Right. Like I was literally telling my therapist last night that like, oh, I'm like starting to like, I feel so tired.
Yeah.
From like everything in life.
Yeah.
And like when things are more parsed, everything has their place. Like, I'm with my kids when they come home from daycare.
Yeah.
But they also have daycare, and then I have time to work, and I have like, like a moment to like breathe and think.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I enjoy my job.
Right.
Like
I didn't even realize I enjoyed my job.
I'm remembering now that I really like what I do.
Yeah.
Because it's been like I'm just barely getting in to get this done.
Yeah, totally.
For so long.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like
that's where I'm at. I'm like coming out of like
a
little bit of a foggy.
Yeah, in a much more 26-year-old version of that.
Yeah.
I've just been I've been like hustling around the city for the last month and a half trying to build this like kind of freelance lifestyle, and it's a much small, you know what I mean? It's like way less intense and serious than your life.
But there's no comparisons. Everybody's
but
26 has its own challenges. I've been there.
But it's like, I'm trying to kind of do the same thing, sort of like build this kind of freelance / semi part-time lifestyle kind of thing, and it's like you run around so much that it's like you're just exhausted at the end of the day. You're just like, oh, okay. It's like, and it's like, and then every once in a while I get a second and I'm like, it's so cool that I get to go. Like, this is the things that I'm tired for. But it's like, you need that second to make all the other stuff worth it. And if you don't have the second, then you're just tired. It's like, it's like you need that little gap to make it's like when you like what you do, you find, I think you need a lot less breaks than you did before. But like no breaks, anyone will burn out. It's just a matter of time. And it's like it's like you can do with a lot less because you're energized by the work, but it's like you need the time away to realize that it's
like I still get psyched. Like when I'm really tired, when I get into the studio to do like, let's say a podcast at night, because it's usually after my kids go to bed, I'm like, I'm so tired, I don't want to do this. But then I'm always so jazzed afterwards because like I'm so passionate about it. So it's like it gives you a second
human
win.
bodies
It gives me a
stupid.
second
You just
win.
like forget every time. Yeah,
it gives you a second win. But then
or maybe human bodies are smarter than the brains. Maybe what it is, but
maybe
they know us better than we know ourselves. Like tell us what
to Richie Beretta said, "Body don't lie, the brain lies, the body don't lie."
That's man. I say it's a great quote. I say that all the time. It's like, as I was saying, like your body's stupid. I was like, I don't think that at all. It's like I think your brain is stupid.
Right.
But I think, and it's also just to kind of finish that topic off. I think also like I've always been. It's funny because like until I started getting into this kind of work for my whole life, I didn't realize I could do this for a living. Really, I always like wanted to be a musician or in some capacity or be around music when I grew up. But I was always like grew up in like Jewish suburbs, very like like doctor, lawyer, make a lot of money, like that kind of thing. And it was like you got it's like expensive lifestyle. You got like you're gonna have family to support and kids to feed, and
that went right over both of our heads.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like and it's like there's no place for the arts and whatever it is, and there's a lot of beautiful things about that community, but like that was one thing that I felt really like I wasn't fit for it, and I
was actually shocked as my friends started getting into that zone. Like I was like, wait, you're not like me gonna do something different,
right?
I was shocked at how everybody kind of fell in line and started getting jobs, like going to law school, going to
and respect. Like these are people I love very, very dearly who do, you know what I mean? Like they're trying to start families young and they're trying to like save for mortgages and they're investing in their future. For sure. You know what I mean? It's it's just a different like it's
no shade at all.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah,
I was just shade that I was just shocked that it was like I was like the only one that was like
all
going on that journey.
Oh shit, like I'm really gonna. And
how is
like,
it just me?
All the cliches about like pursuing your dreams when you're a kid and how hard it is become really real. You're like, oh, like it really is. Like I'm kind of alone in this. Like you know what I mean? And then like finding artist communities also becomes like really important because you find you're just like there's just a bunch of other washed up losers who like spent a lot of their time doing art and like you know what I mean? And it's like and it becomes really special because you all but anyway, I think I mean I can talk about that for an hour, but I think that anyway, like I think what was I saying? That
looking forward on the year.
What'd you say?
No, I'll let you finish.
I got it. Yeah, no, sorry. Oh my god, I totally lost my train of thought there.
I'll
edit this part out.
Or we don't have to edit it. But this is going to be a one-edit episode.
Yeah.
We don't have time to edit this for Sunday.
Yeah, it's true, man. Yeah, like I think that
the creative journey.
Yeah, like when you like when you like from a young age, like I thought I was gonna do this. Right, I remember what I was saying.
Here it is.
Yeah, it's like I thought I thought I was going to. I always wanted to do something like this, but I didn't really understand it. And so I developed a very strong identity from a pretty young age because I was kind of, I think like a lot of kind of hippie, artsy kids who, especially people who grew up in environments that it's not so encouraged. I grew up with a very strong consciousness of like, work sucks. It's like the least important. I've always been like that in school too. It was like school was kind of like, I was like a smart kid, B student. You know what I mean? I was like, never tried that hard in school. And I love that about myself to this day. I'm very proud of that. It's like, it's in a funny way. Like, I'm like, I don't know, you don't prioritize that stuff too much. It's like, you go home, you play guitar, be with people you love. You know what I'm saying? Like you watch a great movie, like that's life. That's what matters. Right. And it's funny because now I'm kind of like, for the first time in my life, really, I think really realizing that I can make a living doing what I always wanted to make a living doing. And it's an interesting thing because I find myself like, for the first time, I actually enjoy working. And I'd never enjoyed working. It was always very easy for me to just kind of work, go home, turn it off. Right. And now it's like for the first time, it's like I find myself like,
thinking about it.
Yeah, like taking less breaks. It's always been very easy for me to like take breaks and like avoid work, and it's like prioritize my mental health and my friendships and whatever. And for the first time, it's like, you know, not sleeping a ton, working a lot, like doing all those things. And it's like an interesting kind of new challenge for me because
that's great.
Yeah, but it's a good problem, but it's like I find myself losing the parts of myself that were always first. And you know what I mean. And it's like what you're saying. Like you love what you do. You got a beautiful family. You got 2 kids. One is brand new. And it's like, and it's like. You love so much what you're doing that you forget that it's like at the end of the day, it's like you're not able to do any of those things if you don't have at least a minute a day, really truly alone, like by yourself. Like, you know, you come into this world alone, you leave this world alone. You got to learn how to be with yourself, and it's like you're just not able to do those other things if you don't prioritize that.
For me, I need that like those like 10 to 20 minutes of like just me time.
Right. And it's like you need less and less of it the more you like what you do with your life.
Right. That's true.
But it's like I've definitely been in jobs that I hated or like been in school or been in positions in school where I just like didn't like what I was doing during the day. And it's like I just found I was like you just taking hour walks all the time and, you know, going home playing guitar for hours and hours and hours and like it's like it's tiring, so you need more time to yourself. And when you like what you do and you feel like yourself more of the time, you really can get by on less sleep and those things, whatever. But that doesn't excuse, you know, it's just everyone. I'm just, you know, I guess I'll say it again, but it's like it's really a big belief of mine. Like you just come into this world alone, you leave this world alone. You need some time with yourself.
Interesting.
While you're here, you know what I mean?
Interesting way of phrasing it.
Yeah, it's like you gotta learn how to be present with yourself in order to be with other people and to do the work that's important.
I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I'm thinking about like
that's the most important.
How much our cell phones have like crept into our personal space and our time for our brains to kind of decompress and figure out where we are.
Yeah, I love going to the movies for this reason, because it's funny because like I feel like I grew up kind of at the last generation where like parents were yelling at their kids for sitting in front of the TV all the time, and now it's just like a way of living. But like,
right. Well, like, we try not to let our kids watch too much.
Yeah, it's a great move, and like no one does it anymore. I feel like no one's like, you know, like I feel like now it's just a part of life.
Yeah.
But when I was, you know, when I was a younger kid in particular, it was definitely like stop, like, you know, like wasting your brain and it's funny because so I grew up with that, but I really feel like now, like sometimes at the end of the day, like putting on like I love going to the movies because you literally can have your phone out and it's like just being swallowed by something and like present and like alone watching something. You can't even talk to the person next to you. It's like I love going to the movies alone for that reason. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I like mixing for that reason too. Also, it's like it's such an engaging task. And it's like you can't like I
do love that also.
Yeah, it's like you can't like it's I'm so overstimulated in like New York 2022 freelancing, doing a bunch of different stuff. It's like
it's really overwhelming.
It's like I'm constantly running around and it's like I'm very time aware all the time. And I find that like when I'm making music, whether it's playing guitar or producing or mixing or whatever it is, it's like or just making a beat or some, you know, stupid whatever. It's like I find like hours pass and it's like I have no grasp on time. And it's like it's one of the only music has become one of the only activities that I still feel that way about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're talking about movies, I was like so relating to it, and I haven't been to a movie since the pandemic. Actually, the last movie I saw was 1917.
I remember. I know because I saw that. I was in Belgium at the time when the pandemic started, and I saw and it was set in Belgium, and I saw it and went to a movie theater with a friend of mine in Belgium.
Amazing movie.
I remember it was the week before the pandemic started.
Intense.
Yeah.
And which was a year also right before another pandemic,
Yep.
ironically.
Yep.
And
true. Funny call.
and so yeah, I might go to a movie tomorrow night. We have our first.
Dude,
me and my
gotta.
wife have our first date night, like our first like proper date night. Like my parents are gonna watch our kids.
Yeah, nice.
So hopefully, I'm like I know it's
going
like
to movies the best, man. It's like
even though
I haven't,
even though we're not gonna talk during the movie, we'll get dinner afterwards and talk, whatever.
Yeah.
But like being in a movie theater just seems like such a nice way to spend time. Just be like fully engaged with it in art or something that's like not like has nothing to do with my regular day-to-day existence.
Yeah, it's like just getting really lost in something is like so. It's like it's such a lost art, and I think like movies are like probably less popular than they've been in the past for that reason because no one has the attention spans anymore. At least like going to the movies. But I think they're also so like I don't buy the whole conspiracy theories about like like movie theaters are like cinemas are like a dying industry because like they're definitely smaller than they've ever been, but there's always gonna like people crave that, man. It's like there's always gonna be enough of an audience that wants to like it's like people think of it as escapism, but it's not. It's being present.
It's also the opposite. It's the best way to experience a movie. The same way that a live show is the best way to experience a live artist.
Yeah, right. There's always going to be it's like streaming services aren't going to like kill live music. Like I feel like there's such like
totally.
Yeah, like people are so scared of that stuff, but it's
they're
like
they're different worlds.
Yeah, and I hear you speaking a lot on the podcast also about this return to kind of imperfection and post-pandemic like distortion in music and and a return to live energy and things like that. And it's like like I perform in New York about once or twice a month, and whenever I play out, it's like I've started to see my performances very like it's almost this like tribal, very like primal thing, and it's like it's the one people I think people come to shows for that, and it's like same reason people go to movie theaters. It's like people you want to get lost in something, and it's harder now than ever. So there's always a place for things that there will always be a place for things that
transcend,
that force you to be present. You know, like against your will, like you have to listen, you have to watch. Like people love that stuff.
I think it'll always be. It's amazing. Well, this episode has been like totally different than I imagined, even though I didn't really imagine much. I was just like, you're here, let's do something.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like I don't even know like what my title of this episode is going to be. Maybe like pontification on creativity or something.
Sure.
Like just living a creative life. But yeah, like I mean, if I have you on the podcast, I have to ask you like I guess the final question of the show, right? Like because this is ask
funny
everybody.
Being on the other side of this,
yeah. You've heard it enough times. But like looking back on, I don't know, let's say the last few years or whatever, was there something that you did or didn't do that you'd want to impart on your earlier self and be like, yo, Gavi, that's the thing you need to keep doing, or like Gavi's quit it. Like,
oh man, I should have prepared myself more for this.
Yeah,
I should have known it was coming.
Off the cuff, come on.
I think seriously though, I think trust your body is what I would say. I don't think I knew how to trust my body for a very long time, really till a few years ago. And I think I was raised very much very anxious, kind of neurotic guy, and thinking a lot about like, does this make sense? Is this, you know what I mean? Like kind of like, or like, should I be doing a lot of shoulds? Should I be doing this? And I think just look inward, trust your body. Your body's going to tell you if you're ready or not, for whatever it is. I think like if there's a new skill or a new relationship or or something you're trying to work on or whatever it is, it's like just because it makes sense to work on it doesn't mean you're ready to. Or on the other hand, maybe you're procrastinating something that you're kind of bored in your life and your body's telling you let's move on. Kick your ass a little bit. Let's move on. Let's get going. Trust your body. Usually ignore your brain. I've started saying recently, it's like I think your brain's really only good at making you money. That's kind of it. You know what I mean? Like your brain is good at like strategizing and solving technical issues and also like building stuff. But like besides that, it's like trust your body. Your body's going to tell you where you need to go. And I think that
interesting.
I would have avoided a lot of issues. I don't really have many regrets. I don't really believe in that kind of thing. But but I would have found myself a lot less frustrated growing up. I think about a lot of different things had I learned how to trust my body more, and I'd be in a better position than I already feel like I am today, I think.
Right. It sounds to me like your body is really like your subconscious more than your conscious brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Like your feelings maybe is a better word. Just trust your feelings, not your thoughts. Your gut, like your thoughts will trip you up.
When your tummy tells you that something is wrong.
Yeah, it's like trust that feeling. Yeah. Or that something's right and you're ignoring it also. It's like whatever it is, like that'll tell you where you need to go. It's gonna tell you what what job you need to get, or it's whatever, like all the, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like all that stuff. It's like so many times I've been worried, just to use one specific example, like so many times since I moved to New York in the last couple of years, have I been insecure or worried that I'm not making enough money. A very small fraction of those times have I felt like my in a vacuum, I'm worried that I'm not making enough money. You know what I mean? Like there have been times where I've like been actually concerned and be like, got some responsibilities, got to pay rent, got to get my shit together, figure out, whatever. Most of those times it's just been like I'm around people who are, like accountants or whatever it is, like making more money and or like big shot, whatever it is. And it's like, so you don't feel all insecure and like you confuse those feelings for your own feelings. But when you look inward, I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, I feel fine. Like I'm doing what I enjoy. I'm paying the rent. I'm like, I'm getting a nice lunch every once in a while. It's like, that's all. It's like, what am I really worried about is social acceptance.
Right.
Among people who half the time either already accept you anyway, and you're judging yourself.
Yep.
Or people who've, fuck them. And like, those are, if they're really,
totally.
if those, it's like, you don't care about them in the first place.
Yeah. I relate to a lot of that.
Yeah. That's an example, I think, but just trust your body, trust your feelings. If you notice that you feel okay, you don't need to do anything different. And if you notice something's wrong, you're the only person who's going to tell yourself that you need to change. So,
right. All right. Well, trusting ourselves and, let's look forward to a new year where we're trusting ourselves more. We feel more creative. We're willing to let things go, but also objectivity, all the things that we've discussed, and we can all continue to pontificate it together.
Yeah. Think through it and don't take your thoughts too seriously. Just have a good time and
have a good time.
Have a good times. Yeah.
Spinal
and
Tap.
Do things. Yeah.
Do you ever see Spinal Tap?
Yeah, of course.
Like, have a good time all the time. So good.
It's a classic
movie. Well, Gavi, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for editing the show and for helping me, because I was like not joking about like the sustainability stuff with me.
Of course, man. I know.
And I when you started working on the show, really took a massive load off of my shoulders.
Yeah,
because like every week I was editing the show and I'm just like, I can't keep doing this.
And I'll end with this, but it should go without saying that it's really a huge privilege to be working with you and to be editing the show and to be listening to all the viewers at home, all the everybody. It's really been a crazy privilege to have such an intimate look into all of the people you've been speaking to this last year and to feel even somewhat involved in what they're doing.
Likewise, by the way, like I'm still in awe of the people I've interviewed.
Yeah, and it's like to gain for me also. It's been a huge deal to gain a vocabulary and to feel like I have kind of even a small part in that conversation. And it's been a really invaluable way for me to kind of enter that world. So thank you, man.
Awesome. Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
We'll close it out on this. And until next time, everyone, take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Secret Sonics. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you've been digging the show, it would be awesome if you could share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend or two, and or leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher of choice. That's it for now. Have a great week. Take care and dig in. See you soon. Bye-bye.